This episode contains strong language.
I tell everybody I feel like I dropped out of the sky and landed in a big fucking marshmallow.
Welcome to Local Wire, a community news service podcast that brings Vermont news to your ears. The guy that was just talking, that's Dave, a 66-year-old formerly incarcerated individual living at the Hartford Dismiss House, the community being the marshmallow he's referring to. Here's Executive Director of Dismiss of Vermont, Jim Curran.
Dismiss of Vermont is a therapeutic community home, and really what our focus is, or our mission is to reconcile former prisoners with their communities, but also reconcile the communities with the former prisoners as well.
Dismiss House was originally founded in 1974 by Father Jack Hickey, just outside of Vanderbilt, Tennessee. Then, in 1986, Rita McCaffrey opened the first Vermont house in Burlington and then Rutland. Currently, there are 5 houses, 2 in Burlington, 1 in Hartford, and a men's and a women's house in Rutland. Dismiss provides shelter and opportunities for next steps, such as recovery and finding permanent housing and employers. Residents have to help the maintenance of the house, attend weekly house meetings, and mandatory dinners, and also keep themselves accountable for their goals. It's a 3-month commitment, and the individuals can choose when they're ready to leave. How it works is if an incarcerated individual is ready for parole, they can reach out to their caseworker, who would then help with the referral to Dismiss, and eventually getting in. Transitioning to housing from prison can be difficult because a lot of residencies are not affordable and discrimination can take place because of their criminal records. Here's Sean, a 45-year-old resident at the Hartford House.
The reason why the Dismiss House is such a special place is also because of the housing crisis. You know what I mean? There's no places for rent. So when you're incarcerated, you need to, come out to a residency, or just when you're coming out, reintegrating into the community under supervision. Probation and parole requires residency before they'll even let you out into the community. Follow what I'm saying? So without having any kind of rental property in place or an approved residency by probation and parole in advance, then you're not going to be released into the community. That's why the Dismiss House being close with probation and parole, their relationship has made it so that coming in has been a lot easier of an opportunity without trying to find an approved residency.
Here's Jeff Backus, the Hartford House Director.
Everybody that comes here, they come because they either A, don't have any place to go when they're eligible for release, or they don't have a safe place to go after jail, go back to where they came from, which is generally not a good place to be.
And so in a practical and literal sense, Dismiss helps some people get out of prison who otherwise would not be able to get out of prison, because it provides a place for them to live. And it provides connections to these remarkable staff at these locations throughout the state who are able to work with them and help support them by getting them the kind of supports they need, the kind of services they need, and help talk with them about their lives. Second chances are not evenly distributed. A lot of us get a lot of second chances. I lose count in the 20s or 30s when I think of the different kinds of second chances that I've gotten. And I'm just sitting at dinner with people that haven't gotten as many.
That was Alec Ewald. Alec has been bringing and eating food with Dismiss once a month, almost every single month for the past 8 years. A cornerstone of Dismiss is the community dinners that each resident is required to make it to every weeknight. Here's Alec again.
Dismiss is particularly valuable because it does give you that chance to just sit down for an hour and just be people having a meal together. That in a very simple way is a kind of reconciliation experience that is hard to get otherwise. We don't have that many opportunities in American society where we're just sitting down with people who have had really different experiences than us. We just don't. The experience itself feels really rewarding. It feels interesting. It's we all can get sort of stuck in our little bubbles, in our own little narrow experiences, and seeing the same places and seeing the same people. And for me, it's really valuable just to sit down and share a meal with some people who are having different experiences, and just to hear what's going on for them. To be welcomed into their home is also a really huge part of what feels so positive about it for me, is just to be welcomed as a guest in somebody else's home, and to know that that's what's going on. These people who are welcoming me have been facing some pretty serious challenges and continue to. They're all working or looking for work, and they've got family stuff going on. But it's just, I don't want to give the wrong impression. Like, we also just have enjoyable conversations. We just what are you guys doing this weekend? How about this weather? Red Sox and Yankees arguments. What kinds of jobs people are doing? What kinds of food people like to cook? How people would compare tonight's dinner to some other dinners that we might have shared together. How do you make this dish? When you were growing up, that's what we do. We almost never talk about, heavy stuff or anything too personal. So it's really just an enjoyable conversation.
Through those dinners, connections are made, and sometimes they're very positive connections, whereas, it might be an employment opportunity or even a landlord opportunity where you might be able to identify somebody that's a good fit for your situation too as well. People tend to grow and develop with what they learn from their environment and their communities and from others. And I think it's really important that we look at this two ways, is that there's the community inside the house, and that would be the staff that are working with the residents every day. And then it's the residents themselves. They're charged with the help governing the house, basically. They have regular meetings. They talk about things that, one person may do that they might not have realized really affects somebody else in a different way. They talk about responsibility. They talk about volunteer activities, which ones they like and which ones they don't. And then they also have that community where on any given weeknight, a member from the community has come in and volunteered their time to not only provide dinner for these individuals, so everybody that's living in the house, but to sit down and actually break bread and, be a part of that community. And that's pretty much where the Dismas magic exists, is that there are individuals that not necessarily have ever been involved in corrections or anything to that level that are willing to come in and sit down on a human level and just talk about life, talk about experiences, talk about hopes and dreams, as well as talk about hardships, and just be real.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's a little embarrassing, but it's nice to know that people care to go through that, because let's face it, it's a lot of work, it's time, it's money.
That's Dave. He's been in the Hartford house for about 3 months now. Kathy Fox is a professor at UVM. She brings her classes into Dismas every once in a while. Here she is.
By bringing in a meal and, sharing it with people and giving your time, it's showing that you care about what happens to them and that you are, treating them as any other human at the table. And I think that's really nice. I feel strongly that we all have a responsibility, once someone has done their time, to try to welcome them back into the community. And I think it's in everyone's interest to do that. I think you get better results when you do that. I think we have an obligation to one another as neighbors. And when people get out of prison, they are our neighbors. One of the clear ways to reduce future offending is to help people reintegrate after they get out of prison. And we put up all these barriers by making it hard to get a job, making it hard to get an apartment, making it impossible to vote, because we just, for whatever reason, want the punishment to just keep going, or we want to keep people at arm's length. But it's really ineffective. And to the extent that we take an active role in reintegrating people and welcoming them back and treating them like they are one of us, it yields better results.
As a nation, we're starting to understand that, there is some inequities as far as who goes to prison and who doesn't go to prison. When you think about what someone is supposed to do when they are released, when they have paid their debts to society. It's like, the easy thing is like, well, they should just get a job and, get a place to live and, support themselves. But if you think about all the little barriers that are in that person's way, and we as a society totally expect them, we're like, okay, start doing the right thing. When you have people that have barriers like that, or have barriers to housing, or, it can be even simply as if they are of working age and nobody will hire them because they have a record, then what are they supposed to do? And so I think as a society, we kind of have to think about that in the sense that people deserve second chances. And if we all say on surface that, yeah, we think everybody should deserve second chances, we can't just say, except for these people.
When you come out, you don't necessarily have any existing positive supports. And the guys here, they lean on each other as positive supports. And then we introduce the volunteers, which is, we have hundreds of volunteers that come in and out of this house, and they offer their services. Not only they cook for us, but we have a newer initiative called Resident Life, where volunteers come in, they help people do simple things that we take for granted, write resumes, job applications. How do I get my insurance started up? It's stuff we've always handled in-house, but if we can tap into some of the expertise in the surrounding community and bring that together, that always helps. It gives everybody a bigger identity. The stigma you leave jail with, I'm a criminal, this is what I'll always be, that's pretty much what they get told in jail. And then they come here and they identify with not only Dismas, but the greater community.
Here is Eric Maguire, the Rutland Men's House Director.
Going straight back to work 40 hours a week is not going to reduce their risk of relapse, nor is it going to reduce any type of risk of recidivism. But a well-developed, comprehensive, individualized service plan in which you're taking recovery-related components, treatment-related components to address their risks, meeting their needs in a manner that they're going to respond, and then implementing some work in there, they'll have a greater chance of succeeding when they are out on their own. The greatest barrier and challenge that an individual has coming out of incarceration in the community is the Vermont Department of Corrections does not have a reentry philosophy. We will continue to run into challenges of reintegrating individuals into society until a reentry philosophy is developed. That's the greatest challenge and barrier I have with working with individuals. They are coming out with absolutely nothing.
The DOC, for me particularly, did nothing for me to prepare me to get out. No doctor lined up, no medical thing what I had to have, and these people are the ones that ended up helping me. To put it in a nutshell, it's a launching pad for me. I don't have to worry about eating meals at night. I don't have to worry about where I'm sleeping and the phone and all the help. There's no pressure from bills and landlords and this guy and this and that. And the guy uses that for an excuse, to go off. So they negate all that kind of stuff. It's up to you if you're going to move forward or not, but you don't have any excuses if you're staying here.
Coming into the Dismas house, transitioning, they were welcoming overly. You know what I mean? They opened their home to me. The community opened their hearts to me. They've accepted me, and I've seen them accept everybody else that's come through these doors.
Sometimes the transition from prison to Dismas is really difficult. Some folks are disoriented by the community that they walk into. Here's Rutland Women's House Director Heather Hurley, followed by Assistant House Director Kaylee Rankin.
Those individuals will typically self-sabotage because they don't feel like they're worth having what they have. But once they figure that out, and we're not going to just give up on them, it usually is very effective for how they see themselves, and when they have better self-esteem, because most of the women that we work with have been traumatized in one way or another, or multiple ways. So their self-esteem is really low. And so I think having us on their side and, kind of advocating for them without enabling them is just a big factor. It's something that they really needed.
It's not so much of them accepting it, it's them believing that we actually are there for them.
We try to get them to think about things independently so that, when they're on their own, they can do it themselves.
Right, because it's ultimately the goal. The goal is that they reintegrate back in the community, they have somewhere to live, their own apartment or their own house or whatever, some housing, a job.
They're paying their bills.
Yeah, seeing their children if that's something that they have.
And managing their life with this same stressors everybody else has, but developing the coping skills in order to do that. Because right now, a lot of these women, when they get here, their coping skills don't work for them anymore.
Yeah.
Because they were ones that kept them alive on the streets, and that's not always where they're going to be.
Empathy and perspective were recurring themes that cropped up in my conversations with house directors and also student Kenzie Imhoff. She lived in the Burlington Dismiss House for 4 months.
I think living with someone, you get a really real sense of humanity and real sense of who they are. Hearing people's stories, you realize the reason why they were incarcerated in the first place a lot of times, isn't so grave as you initially would assume. You realize that a lot of life circumstances leading to them being incarcerated were partially out of their control. I would strive to be more sensitive in what I was saying.
I just get to know someone a little bit more than I would have never gotten to know them. And I also get to understand what their challenges are. And it's not just being a former prisoner, but there's also other parts of their lives that kind of contributed or led them up to that moment where they did commit something and they did have to go to prison. And so understanding that their past experiences kind of led them in the way they are. And a lot of the times it's the environment that they were brought into. It's not necessarily an environment they created for themselves. And so I think I understand that more and more every time I interact with somebody. Everybody's just people and they're trying to move on. And I think the most important thing for us at Dismiss is we really truly believe that people should not be judged for the rest of their life for the worst thing they've ever done in their life.
I've learned patience over time because I came out of the correctional system too directly here. And I can only imagine what the residents go through, but I had a whole decompression period happen to me too. I wasn't used to people talking to me without wanting something. So I had to grow and learn to let my guard down. And it was not about, crime and punishment. It's about adapting and patience and understanding.
My sister struggles with addiction, and I haven't probably talked to her in 2 years, and here and there she'll reach out, but it's not anything that's productive for her. But working with women that are struggling with their own addiction has kind of helped me to see it from a different perspective. Because I felt like beforehand, I took it so personally when she didn't do something, when she wasn't there, when she said she was supposed to be there, or there were so many things that she missed out on, and I took it so personally because it is my sister, and I see it firsthand in my family and how it affects my family. But now working on the other side of it, I see there's nothing personal about it, actually. And it has nothing to do with their family members. It has everything to do with them and the struggles that they're going through. So that was just a really cool perspective to have.
I went to high school here and kind of grew up here and never liked it much, I have to say. And then when I started working at Dismiss, and the volunteers that work with us and are in it for the long haul, that have been volunteering for years, they've shown me the other side of Rutland, the real supportive, just amazing. We have the most amazing volunteers. You wouldn't believe how generous they are, and with their time and their money, and it's a community within the community.
Yep.
And it's a really strong one.
They greeted you real positively and, went over this, that, and the other thing, get your own room. They give you new sheets and pillow stuff and blah, blah, blah. You get a backpack full of everything from razors and deodorant and just everything that you could need. So that right alone was quite a shock.
I'm not used to being that spoiled. No, it's nice. It's nice, but it's different. It bothers me to get stuff for nothing. I gotta think about that. And I think it's just my generation.
It's been a great opportunity for me to really kind of rebound back into the community. These people have been just so generous, and the community has been such a support. Tough situation anyways, to be accepted, or, you know what I mean, without anybody knowing what why you were incarcerated, you know what I mean? But this Dismiss House, as part of the community, has really brought us together with people that bring us food, and, you know what I mean, the community members that support us, so that we don't feel so shunned and so like unlikely to, feel well about ourselves and do well. There's kind of a stigma that sticks to anybody that's gone to jail. It's kind of hard to shake it, and the community members have just really, really, hit my heart. The way that they come in and bring us food every day, and the way that they hang out and spend time with us, they want to know us, you know what I mean? It's just been really warming to be able to feel that.
On one hand, you can feel really, really connected with a person, and you've laughed together and eaten together and gone through the seasons together, or whatever it is. But we're really respectful of their privacy and their dignity as a part of their privacy, and it's one of the real central commitments of the entire reform movement, not just of Dismiss, but as it's famously been put, that I think Brian Stevenson writes about this, but none of us is the worst thing we did. It's really important that none of us be defined by the one or two worst things that we did. And when you're a volunteer at Dismiss, and actually even when you're a board member at Dismiss, we're not asking, and we don't know, and that's part of the point. I mean, I'm a guest in their house, and you set the terms of our relationship, and you set the terms of what we're here talking about. So it means that I don't necessarily know a lot about what's going on for them in their private life, and that's the way it should be.
When you work for the state, and it should be, is there's more of a boundary of us and them kind of separation. And with Dismiss, we don't have that. It's more inclusive, kind of like you're all a big family, right? Dysfunctional or what, but it's still a family. I see it having a lot more impact and being more effective for support, because there's so much stigma, especially around addiction. Mm-hmm. And when we remove that and remove the us and them kind of mentality, I think they see themselves as more of a person, and not somebody who's diseased or a minimal person in society. They know that they have more worth.
It's nice being a part of their team, and we remind them every single day, like, we're proud of you, we're on your team. And we work here, but like, we live here too. We love you. So
if they put in the work and they're here and we're with them every day, mm-hmm. they do become like family. Mm-hmm. And when they move out, it doesn't mean that's it. You're no longer family. We still continue to support and stay in contact with them as much as they want us to. If we're somebody who they talk to or turn to when they need help, then I'll stay that way.
They really thrive on the fact that they know that there's a community that's rooting for them, that's there to support them, that want them to succeed, that wants them to be part of the community again, that, really wants to help. And however that is, whether it's just giving them someone to talk to, helping them with job applications or resume, or even in their housing search, or just simply with the volunteer cook program and cooking that house dinner and sitting down and just being human with one another. I think that's the biggest power. And then I think once we treat everybody with dignity, then people start to, turn that around and provide dignity outwards too to others.
We recognize the importance of working with the individual and serving the individual to put them in the best position to succeed when they do fully return to the community. So the collaboration, the unity that we have as a whole is unprecedented throughout the state. We really all work together in the best interest of the individual.
Dismiss of Vermont went through a year of reinvention because change is necessary.
Having like furlough officers come into the house and like search people's rooms is like kind of jarring. The model of Dismiss itself for me was really challenging. I just found it really demanding as a student to be there 5 nights a week when I was really stressed down about a lot of things. And Monday nights we'd have like an hour, 2-hour house meeting. And I found that sometimes the rules kind of maintain this idea of like formerly incarcerated individuals need a lot of discipline or like control.
We have made some serious changes, and we're going to a less punitive model and a more reparative or restorative model, in the sense that you make a mistake and you go back to jail. Now it's more of trying to understand, well, why that mistake was made and how can we help you make a healthier choice going forward.
Here we are now in 2021. We just revamped our approach to relapse because we're understanding it better. And now when relapse happens, we still have those hard conversations, but the focus is on treatment. Okay, what do we do now? And we offer you treatment. If you want to live here, you have to engage in some form of treatment, try to help yourself, help us help you. And it's worked. And as we're getting further into this, first I'm looking back at all the people that went back to jail for relapse, and I'm thinking we could have done better. And then I recently, only last week, had somebody come to me, admit to relapse, which was unheard of previously. Nobody would just admit to it. It's a shameful thing for them. And they came to me and said, this happened, I want help. And with no threat of going back to jail or anything, they just wanted the support. And I was like, this is fantastic. This is exactly what we're going for. And we got them into treatment, and they're still here, and the people around them too. It rubs off. There's a ripple effect. Everybody sees the support, and I think we're on to something.
Also, over the past year and a half, the COVID-19 pandemic has seriously affected Dismiss and those currently in prison.
When the lockdown started to happen, many of the services, weren't available in regards to, mental health services or recovery-based services. And, the residents were responsible for following the same governor's guidelines as you and I. It was a significant challenge because a lot of the services weren't as accessible as previously. Everything from getting an ID from the DMV to their required groups, whether the groups were performed by supervision or they performed by their providers. We would commit to following the governor's orders. We would commit to doing everything we could to keep our loved ones as well as our community safe by following the protocols that were in place. And they responded to it. And it got us to this point where we're at today.
In many prisons, the way they effectively dealt with COVID and in preventing outbreaks, if they could, was putting everybody in solitary confinement. And realizing that a lot of the people that are coming out of prison now, on top of whatever adverse childhood experience they may have had or whatever trauma they had before they were incarcerated, have now had the trauma of living in a prison cell for over a year with only 15 minutes outside of that prison cell on any day. So, you can't put an animal in a cage like that and expect them to be a normal animal when they come back. And we're talking about people.
In some ways, the staff of the houses, they're really among the heroes. It's such an overused word these days, but the fact that the houses did as well as they did through COVID is just a testament to the residents and their flexibility and resilience, and the staff. We had staff at the houses across the state that were just doing absolutely extraordinary, above and beyond duty in the face of genuine danger.
There's two paths. One's the hard path, and the other one's the easy path. And HART I use as an acronym: honesty, accountability, responsibility, and discernment. And discernment can be defined in 3 words: understanding the truth. Understanding the truth of your situation. Don't use a false narrative. Don't opinionate something that's factual. And then the easy road being making excuses, making assumptions, being self-serving. And then when individuals like Dismiss or agents or individuals like myself and agencies like Dismiss are extending a hand to support, you yonder away from it. I got it all figured out. And if you think about that for a minute, if you practice the hard every day, that's hard. We're not responsible for their successes, and we're not responsible for their failures. They are.
I'm Nagusky, and you've been listening to Local Wire. Be sure to check out our podcast for more Vermont news stories at communitynews.net or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find out more information on Dismiss and volunteering at dismissofvt.org.